The sun had not yet risen when the blade was drawn for the first time. It was no ordinary sword. Its name was Joyeuse, and within its steel it bore the weight of an empire that did not yet exist but was already beginning to bleed. Imagine two men, a single blow, and the future of Europe hanging in the balance. One mistake, one slip, and everything we know today, kingdoms, languages, cultures, could have turned out differently. But what really happened on that fateful day? Why does a duel between two Frankish warriors still echo to this day? And above all, how did a sword become the symbol of one of the greatest empires in history? Before we dive into this story of ambition, betrayal, and steel, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. That way, you make sure more stories like this reach you and help us bring the past to even more people. The year was 778. Europe was still a mosaic of fragmented kingdoms, where Germanic tribes, decadent Romans, and new peoples fought for power in a bloody game. The Franks, until then a warrior people but disunited, were beginning to emerge as an unstoppable force. At the center of this whirlwind was Charlemagne, a king of only 26 years old, but already with the ambition of an emperor. His goal? To unify the Franks and create an empire to rival the old Roman Empire. But there was a problem. His brother, Carloman, did not share the same vision. And worse, he had the support of a powerful faction of the nobility who saw Charlemagne as a threat. Meanwhile, in the shadows, a sword was being forged. It was no ordinary weapon. Joyeuse was created to be the symbol of a new beginning, a blade that would either unite or destroy a people. It is said that its steel was tempered with lost Roman techniques and that its hilt was carved with runes, invoking the protection of pagan gods. But to Charlemagne, it was more than that. It was the personification of his destiny. So let us introduce the man behind the blade. Charlemagne was not like other kings. Tall and imposing, with a red beard that fell like fire across his chest, he had a charisma that made men follow him to their deaths. But he also carried a fury that few dared to provoke. Since childhood, he had been trained for war, and his early years were marked by the shadow of his father, Pepin the Short, a king who unified the Franks but left behind a legacy of divisions. Charlemagne grew up hearing one phrase, "A kingdom divided cannot stand," and he was determined to prove that this was true. On a cold winter night, as the wind howled through the cracks of Aachen Palace, Charlemagne received the news that would change everything. His brother, Carloman, had declared war. Not a war of armies, but something more personal, a duel. "Let it be decided by steel who will rule the Franks," Carloman had said in his message. Charlemagne knew he could not refuse. To refuse would be to admit weakness, and weakness was something a Frankish king could not afford to show. The days that followed were tense. The Frankish nobility was divided. Some supported Charlemagne, seeing in him the future of a strong empire. Others, loyal to Carloman, believed the younger brother would bring stability. Meanwhile, Joyeuse was sharpened every night, as if the sword itself knew its moment was coming. Charlemagne would spend hours looking at it, wondering if he would be able to use it against his own blood. The duel was set for dawn on a spring day. The location? An open field on the outskirts of Soissons, where the dew still covered the grass like tears. Hundreds of nobles and warriors gathered to watch. There were no rules, just one. The last man standing would rule the Franks. When the two brothers met in the center of the field, the silence was so thick you could hear the creaking of their armor. Carloman, shorter and more agile, drew his sword first. Charlemagne gripped Joyeuse with both hands, feeling its weight. "Let the gods decide," he murmured. The first blow was swift. Carloman lunged like lightning, aiming for Charlemagne's neck, but Joyeuse moved as if it had a life of its own, deflecting the attack at the last second. Charlemagne counterattacked, but his brother dodged with the agility of a wolf. The two circled each other like dancers at a deadly ball. Each blow echoed like thunder, and the crowd held its breath. It was then that Charlemagne made a mistake. Distracted by a movement from Carloman, he let his guard down. His brother's sword tore through his armor, opening a deep gash in his arm. Blood spurted out, staining the grass red. Charlemagne staggered but did not fall. Instead, something inside him awoke. An ancient fury, inherited from his father, took over his eyes. He raised Joyeuse above his head, and with a scream that seemed to come from the depths of the earth, delivered a blow that split Carloman's sword in two. The entire field seemed to freeze. Carloman looked at the remains of his blade, incredulous. Charlemagne, panting, pointed Joyeuse at his brother's chest. "Surrender," he said, his voice hoarse. Carloman, humiliated, knelt down. There was nothing more to be done. The duel was over. The consequences were immediate. With Carloman out of the way, Charlemagne unified the Franks under his command, but the price was high. The nobility who had supported his brother never fully forgave him, and uprisings broke out for years. Even so, he persevered. Joyeuse became his constant companion, a symbol of his power, and over time, Charlemagne built an empire that stretched from Spain to Hungary, from the North Sea to Italy. He was crowned emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and Joyeuse was by his side in every battle, at every coronation, as if she were an extension of his own arm. But the story doesn't end there. It is said that the sword carries a curse, that those who wield it with excessive ambition are doomed to fall. Charlemagne, despite all his power, died alone, haunted by visions of his brother and the thousands who fell in his campaigns. Joyeuse, in turn, disappeared for centuries until she was rediscovered in medieval France. Today it rests in the Vienna treasury chamber, but its legend lives on. After all, how many swords can claim to have decided the fate of a continent? And you, what did you think of this story? Do you believe that Joyeuse was truly cursed, or was it just the weight of Charlemagne's ambitions? Leave your comment below and tell us which character or historical event you'd like to see in the next video. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our journeys through the past. See you next time.